look into a conflict of interest controversy at an Ivy League school. Dartmouth College under investigation by New Hampshire's Attorney General's office for endowment investment practices. There might be some business ties to the school's board members. Josh Humphreys, a fellow with Telus Institute, has taken the microscope to some of these Ivy League schools, and he joins us from Boston. Josh, good morning to you. Let's start with Dartmouth's response to this investigation. It says that investing with companies or funds managed by an alumnus or trustee is legal. So Dartmouth's stance is that it may not be breaking any laws, but you point out that there is still a conflict of interest nonetheless. In what way? How does this hurt the school?
Well, what Dartmouth has going on up in Hanover may very well not be illegal. We'll have to wait and see. I'm obviously not an attorney. We'll let the Attorney General decide that. But what's clear is that what's going on is unethical, and it's definitely not best practice. I mean, even the CFA Institute, I know there are a lot of charter holders out there who are probably watching today. CFA Institute and plenty of governance experts say that the best practice is for there to be no business between board member affiliated firms and the school. And that's just not the case at a place like Dartmouth, where about half a dozen trustees, in fact, are affiliated with hedge funds and private equity firms and other money managers that are running money for the college's endowment. We're talking about hundreds of millions of dollars. And we've got a real problem of stewardship when you've got so many trustees who are actually gaining privately from the mandates that they have for running money for the school.
How does it compromise the school?
Well, it's pretty tough. I mean, you can probably imagine when the chair of the Board of Trustees, Steve Mandel, and the chair of the investment committee, Bill Hellman, both are very, very high decision makers at very prominent hedge funds and PE firms. They've also got mandates to run portions of the endowment. So how does the Board of Trustees and how does the investment committee function when you've got people who have a private interest in the decisions that are being made? Basically, in a kind of best case scenario, under those kinds of conflicts, those people need to recuse themselves and leave the room. So the Board of Trustees and the investment committee at Dartmouth, they basically function without their chairs. And then you've got so many other trustees that also have skin in the game, quite literally, that in order to ratify any decisions about endowment investments, I mean, literally, you got half of the room, a third of the room, they've got to get up and leave. I mean, that's just not the way to run an endowment.
Right, and that's not happening right now. Let's talk about the size of Dartmouth's endowment, because compared with other schools in its league, it's fairly small. $3.4 billion in 2010 versus Harvard's $32 billion. What can you tell us about Dartmouth's endowment performance over the past few years? I mean, was it trying to play catch up to some of the other schools like Harvard?
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously Dartmouth has an inferiority complex because of size. And it's not necessarily fair to compare Dartmouth with an endowment like Harvard. They're all Ivy League institutions, but Harvard's obviously got considerable weight in this space when they're 10 times larger than Dartmouth, or Yale being roughly 5 times larger, 5 or 6 times larger. But nevertheless, if you look at their peers, and Ivies like to compare themselves to one another, over the last decade, my understanding from the data that I've seen is that Dartmouth's at the bottom of the heap. So these kinds of conflicts of interest don't seem to be helping them on performance. But ultimately, I don't think performance is the issue. The issue here is ethics and stewardship. And when you've got so many conflicts, the board just cannot function with objectivity and independence. And that's what's needed when you've got important fiduciary decisions that need to be made.
Josh, let's put this into the broader context. College tuitions are rising. There's been a lot of outrage and concern over that. It's certainly outstripping the rate of inflation. What's the link between the way schools' endowments are managed and the rising costs of attending a university?
Well, it's kind of counterintuitive in a way. I mean, over the last 2-3 decades, endowments have amassed amazing amounts of wealth. I mean, college endowments nationwide have some $400 billion in combined assets under management. They've grown considerably faster than the rate of inflation. And at the same time, rather than tapping the endowments to keep tuition costs at an affordable level, instead we also see student debt increasing at higher rates than any other form of leverage out there. As we know, the $1 trillion student debt number is repeatedly floated. It seems to be approaching that if it hasn't reached it yet. And yet endowments have also amassed a lot of wealth. I mean, the only relationship that I see is one of paradox, but we definitely see across the board, especially among the most highly endowed universities and colleges, that the the pay packages that are going to people running the endowments are really becoming astronomical. And
Gotcha.
a decade ago, most schools didn't even have chief investment officers. Now the chief investment officer of a college is routinely the most highly compensated employee on campus.
All right.
And we're talking about multi-million-dollar pay packages for a lot of them at a nonprofit institution.
Josh Humphreys, thank you for their perspective. We got to leave it there. A fellow at TELUS Institute talking to us about the conflict of interest at some of the Ivy League schools and the way they manage their endowments.